Welcome to Real Talk, brought to you by Roberta's House. This is a space for honest conversations about grief, healing, and everything in between. Grief shows up in moments we don't expect and stays longer than we planned. This podcast is about making space for those moments and the people living through them. No scripts, no pressure, just real people telling the truth about what it means to carry loss and keep going.
Hello, my name's Annette March Grier, and I am president and co-founder of Roberta's House. So I am coming to you today to address this occasion that is coming this weekend on Mother's Day. And Mother's Day is a point of time that many individuals who have lost their moms, had their moms die, or they're a mother and lost a child may be really struggling on this particular holiday. And it's just one of many special days that we will reflect upon those moms that are no longer here, that we miss so dearly, that was so much a part of our lives. And their moms who have had children to die, who's missing maybe that one or two or more children. And what this day really means. We need to focus more on the treasures that we hold, the memories that we hold that are dear to us. And even if tears arise, let those be tears of joy. It's okay to grieve and miss our loved ones, but I think if we focus on the blessings, on the gratitudes that we have about the people who are in our lives, it helps lift us up. And sometimes just even telling the stories, something special you might do or think about doing if you're mother or grandmother or whatever mother figure you had in life and you're missing them. So how could you best honor them? How could you best honor them? And you know what? I think one way of best honoring them is to maybe tell their stories. Tell their stories. I have a story about my mom. My mother has passed away now. She died April 18th of 2006. It has been 20 years, believe it or not. 20 years, I can't imagine. It still seems like yesterday. And one thing I have to say is, yes, I went through my grief of her. And it took me to a whole different space and a level in my life. Grief does that if you allow yourself to grow with it. And so it's interesting that I'm just in a space 20 years later, and her stories of her own particular life still have so much meaning to me as her child, as one of her children that she raised. So if I might tell you a story about Roberta March. In fact, her real name is Julia Roberta March. She didn't care for the name Julia too much. So she went by Roberta, and her real close friends called her Bert. And just to give you a little bit of background, Bert was actually born in Atlantic City, New Jersey, but I believe her mother went to Atlantic City, lived in Baltimore, went to Atlantic City to give birth to her, and I believe at that time it was a midwife. So, of course, during those days, they didn't go to a hospital, they were midwives. So, but then she brought Roberta back here to Baltimore to live. And Roberta was one of 5 children. She grew up very poor, soon after the Depression. She was a majorette in the St. Francis band. right, I think it was right here in East Baltimore. And she was a majorette carrying this baton in her white boots. And she, met my dad when she was 16 and 17 years old. In fact, my dad used to sell newspapers during the mornings, 4 a.m. in the mornings, and he would give my mother a quarter a week so that she could get soup for 5 cents at school, because she did not have lunch money. And so they became lovebirds, 16 and 17 years old. See, she was also raised by her grandmother that she cared for when she died of cancer. So my mother was always a very nurturing person, I believe, by spirit and heart. So anyway, she meets my dad, and they get married at a very young age, like 18 and 19 years old, and he goes off to the military or to war during World War II, and they had gotten married just before that. And fortunately, he lived through those wars, World War II and the Korean War, came back to Baltimore, and they had one child at that time, which was my oldest sister. But let me tell you how their life sort of went. So my father came back looking for work and decided that he wanted to become a mortician. And he came home to my mother and said, "Bert, I think I want to go to New York, go to school and get a mortician license." And she said, "What? You are out of your mind. You are out of your mind." Now keep in mind of what exists now about her life as I move forward. So she said she was scared to death of dead people. No way in the world would she support him moving away from his family and children for a year to go get a mortuary science license. But she said that she had this little voice say to her, "Now either I'm going to push him forward, or I'm going to pull him down." And she knew it was God speaking to her. And so she contended, and she consented with him and said, "Okay." And she allowed him to go away and come back. And, it's very interesting that she wasn't really, quote unquote, a professional in a way. But I remember now her as a child. She became the cosmetologist, making people look so beautiful. She did the hair, the makeup, she dressed the individuals, she talked to the families and consoled them. And this is the woman who was scared to death of dead people. And yet she actually found something within herself that became her own passion and her heart. And she became the heart of this mom and pop funeral home business that I grew up in, living on the second and third floor of a funeral parlor. So for me to pass through and go out in the house, I would have to actually walk through a room full of dead people around. And sometimes I saw babies, and sometimes I saw children, and then there were old people, all ages. And what I really, really think about is how my mother would tend to the little small infants and preemies. She would go buy baby doll clothes that were really small in order to make the babies look so precious. And I learned later that she had actually had a stillbirth and a miscarriage. She had a set of twins that she actually carried for 9 months, and they were stillborn. And that was traumatic for her, but she never really talked much about it. And yet I saw now how she cared for the little preemies, and she really held on to the moms who came through that funeral home that, you know, were burying their little babies and their small ones. And I saw that in her spirit as a child. I witnessed and her just do how she just cared, and she, you know, she would help anybody in the community. And she was really just, you know, and she just did it naturally. In fact, the house that we lived in, the same funeral parlor, my mother took care of everybody that was sick in the family. Everybody came to live with us. Our sister came when she got sick, and her mom lived with us, you know, when she couldn't take care of herself anymore. My mother had a sister to die, and my mom, you know, took in our 2 cousins that she left behind as teenagers. So I grew up in a house with cousins that were like sisters to me. So, and when her brother got sick, Uncle Billy came to live with us. You know, it was in this neighborhood where this house sat, the funeral home, right here on this corner where Roberta's house exists today. You know, it was a family funeral home. It was like the neighbors would all come through and, you know, maybe just to see who died, but, you know, even as a child, I just, you know, I was one of the little receptionists. I mean, my mom just taught me how to receive people and how to welcome people. And, you know, I just watched her and how she just rolled. And it was just, one thing I have to say about her is that she had a nurturing spirit. She also had a spirit of compassion. She was a leader in so many ways that she didn't recognize, because she really carried this mom and pop business. My dad was the businessman, but she was the heart and soul of the business. And her faith, I tell you, was unstoppable. In fact, she was Catholic. And she was going to church when she had to sit in the back of the church. She had to sit in the back of the church because she was Black. And that, you know, that was St. Anne's Catholic Church. And, but guess what? She worked her way up to the front pew. She became president of the council for the Catholic Church. She became one of the leaderships in the Baltimore community here, as far as, you know, I think it was called HUD, and there was a whole lot of other programs. So, you know, I saw her in so many different ways and doing so many different things, but always trying to help someone else. And that was the spirit that I think that transcended in me, my siblings, and has led us to be able to continue this legacy. And now look where I am now, which is an amazing thing. And when I look back, first of all, someone brought this to my attention, and I never recognized this in my mother's story. You know, she was very resistant first to go into the field of death with my father, or the field of, you know, working with dead people, however she thought about it. And someone said to me, they said, that was a resistant Moses. A resistant Moses. You know, and as I say that, sometimes we're called to do things and we don't have the confidence or the belief that we can do it, but we do it anyway. And that really became clear to me as I am telling this story to you, that not only does Bert's spirit live on, it actually created, or God created, an entity for her spirit to continue to transcend to others. And that is through Roberta's House Grief Bereavement Center. And I know that it is definitely divinely in order. Remember I talked about the stories of, or her story about taking care of those little preemies? We actually have an organization that donates premature burial clothing for babies, infants that die, that we can donate to moms who lose their babies now. We have a hope program for moms who have miscarriages, for moms who lose their infants due to SIDS or other causes. Look at how love transcends through one human being and can touch so many others. And this is how I kind of summarize it. You know, as we tell our stories, you tell your stories to your children. If you're a mother, you're telling your story to your children now. And even if you've made mistakes in life and you've tried to now correct those mistakes, you're still teaching your children the lessons of life, that we can make mistakes, but we can also still become better people by saying yes to what God has called us to do. And so as I now, as the co-founder with my siblings establishing Roberta's House, look back and look at how God continues to show his love and bring his love into this place through all the staff, and Roberta's legacy lives on. We all have different lots in life: small, medium, big, or extra large. Wherever your lot is, you have a purpose. You have a purpose and you have stories to tell. So on this Mother's Day, it's okay to remember. It's okay to hold on to those memories. It's about the lessons of life, what we carry forward. Share your stories. Roberta's life lives on, her spirit lives on in love, in compassion, in kindness, in generosity, all the gifts of the Spirit through God. Thank you, and have a blessed Mother's Day.
This program is supported in part by the Baltimore Mayor's Opioid Restitution Fund, the Maryland Department of Health, and by generous donors like you. For more information or to support our work, please visit robertashouse.org. Real Talk with Roberta's House is executive produced by Dr. Alexander Satori Robinson, with video and sound production by 89 Crowns, and leadership from Annette March Grier, President and co-founder of Roberta's House. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of our guests and contributors and do not necessarily reflect those of Roberta's House. Thank you for listening and for being part of a community that believes healing is possible.